This video is going to explain part 2 of the instructions project, which is writing an analysis plan. So I just want to take a look at the overall view of the project, just to fit this usability test or analysis plan into this greater process. So first, you wrote a proposal, which you've already submitted. Your proposal responded to an imaginary request for proposals, where you've provided some research and an analysis plan to convince the instruction owners that you know what you're talking about, so that they'll hire you. So next, your step is to add more detail to your analysis plan by creating a more formal plan that you'll use in the testing phase. From there, you can use data from your test to write a recommendation report. So this video is really going to focus on what that analysis plan, which can also be called a usability test, what that's going to contain. So let's talk about why we make an analysis plan. It tells your customer, the owner of your instructions, how you plan to analyze their product. In our particular case, it's how we plan to analyze their instructions. It also helps us to identify specific quantitative and qualitative metrics. There are a few readings in the Blackboard folder for your analysis plan that'll help you understand quantitative and qualitative metrics a little more if you don't really get it after this video. The analysis plan can also help you create materials to make the analysis test as organized and consistent as possible. You want your testing plan to be detailed enough that when you go to analyze users completing your instructions, it's seamless. There aren't any issues that come up. So to explain parts of the analysis plan, I'm going to use the hijinks analysis plan. So for the first video, I used the PGCC instructions for registering online as the main sample. But the best analysis plan that I've gotten was from this group hijinks. So we're going to take a look at that one. I recommend that you print that sample analysis plan from the project folder and have it in front of you during this lesson so that you can physically see what I'm talking about and how it fits into the greater document. So if you have the sample in front of you, let's go ahead and start talking about this analysis plan. I pulled this information directly from your assignment sheet. These are the parts of your analysis plan that I am requiring. We're going to break these parts down one by one, but not necessarily in order. I'm going to list them in the order that I recommend you complete the parts, not in the order in which your part should appear in your document. So keep that in mind. First, we'll take a look at scope and/or purpose. That explains what you're doing and why you're doing it. You might want to start with this as a group just to make sure that your group is on the same page. It might refer to guiding questions you're trying to answer through your test, and will often include your usability qualities. What usability qualities or themes are you testing? So the hijinks group has this as their scope and objectives. This is fine. There's nothing wrong with this. They've decided to mention their usability qualities and to list some questions that they'll use to help guide their usability quality investigation. The next part of the analysis plan is your metrics. Once you know what you're trying to find out, your metrics are how you will find these things out. How will you answer these questions? How will you test your usability qualities? And we're going to talk about two different kinds of metrics. One is qualitative, which are subjective metrics. So things like, did you like the instructions? Did you like the design of the instructions? Asking users to provide open-ended recommendations. These are all qualitative. You couldn't necessarily put these on a chart or a graph. Quantitative measurements are exactly what they sound like, quantity related, numerical, measurable. You could easily graph and chart these. These metrics are the things that you'll be measuring and the data you collect about those things. So usability qualities are metrics. If you're trying to look at efficiency, efficiency is a metric. How are you going to measure efficiency? So this is how the hijinks group chose to lay out their metrics. They used a chart. You don't have to. If you look at the instructions for registering online sample, the IFRO sample, they didn't use a chart like this. They made a list. It's up to your group. But I want to look at this chart because I think it will help you understand quantitative and qualitative data if you don't. Their three metrics, the three things that they were trying to investigate, were subjective satisfaction, efficiency of use, and error rate. So they've listed those in this first column. They have quantitative measurements for all three of these usability qualities, and they have qualitative measurements for subjective satisfaction. They also explain for each of these boxes how they plan to collect their data. These are the data collection sheets that we're going to talk about in a second. They also indicate in their chart what data collection sheet will help them identify these metrics. Where will they write down their measurements? Where will they have users answer questions? Things like that. So their three data collection sheets were a survey, a real-time data collection sheet, and a checklist. And we're going to take a look at those next. So with your data collection sheets, that's going to be the stuff that during the test you'll actually have with you and stuff that you will give to your users who are performing your test to have them answer questions, or charts where you write down times or you write down number of errors or number of clicks, things like that. Whatever data you are collecting, you need to record it on a data collection sheet. And each data collection sheet for each user should look the same to keep your data consistent. So, data collection sheets, how you record your answers to questions, and make sure that even though each user should have the same data collection sheets associated with the information you gather from them, it's impossible to collect all of your data from just one data collection sheet. For example, if you are asking your users to answer questions for you, and you want them to circle a number 1 through 10, or you want them to circle the face that most associates with the face that they think they had when they were using your instructions. These wouldn't be on the same data collection sheet as where you, as the test givers, as the observers, are writing down things like how long it takes them to do something. You would need your own data collection sheet to record information that's real-time information, like time, number of clicks, errors, etc., and you would need a separate sheet of paper that you give as a survey or a questionnaire to your user. So that's why you'll have more than one data collection sheet. Here's an example of a data collection sheet. This is a real-time data collection sheet where the observer, so that's you and your group, recorded the time it took users to complete specific tasks. So here, this group wasn't investigating instructions, they were trying to analyze a website, so they made up their own tasks. But for your groups, you're analyzing existing instructions. So as a group, you might want to look at your instructions and think which tasks are most important, or which tasks are most complicated, or should be the simplest, however you want to choose your tasks, and consider collecting time. How long does it take the user to complete that task? So that means your observer will have a phone or a stopwatch or something like that, and will actually write down the time it takes. So here they wrote down how long it took to go to the PGCC English Department's homepage, because they thought that if the homepage was difficult to get to and it took a long time, that was a problem. The degree requirements for completing an English option general education degree. If you're on the English website, it makes sense that you can find this information quickly. So they wrote down the time, and they also wrote down errors. They considered using the back button, so the back arrow, or finding a dead end where they had to use breadcrumbs to get back to their original page. They considered these errors, and the observer also marked down each error and the step where the error occurred. So they were able to collect really important data that later helped them make recommendations to the website. Here's another example of a data collection sheet. This is looking at more subjective questions. But some of these subjective questions are asking for numerical data, like scales. You could put these scale questions on a chart or a graph, but some of them are non-numerical, so descriptive or open-ended questions, such as what specific recommendations do you have, or what specific design changes would you make? You couldn't put these on a chart or a graph as easily and as numerically. They would have to be more descriptive data visualizations. So you need to consider that. How can you collect the more quantitative data and the more qualitative data? And you're welcome to use things like a question, answer sheet, questionnaire, a survey, whatever you think would be helpful for you to gather the data that you need. And another kind of checklist that this group had was they had a checklist for error types such as a broken link or typos, misinformation, outdated information, etc. Because they didn't want their real users to have to go through and find this information. This is information that you can look for once. So as a group, they sat down and they tried to find as many of these errors as possible and made a chart of them. I'm going to show you another checklist. This checklist is not from the hijinks sample. This is from the instructions for registering online. This is another checklist that you can do. So in your research, you may have found kind of do's and don'ts for writing good instructions. It may be hard to test the do's and don'ts through a real user test, but you could complete a checklist to give you more information. So overall, together, your data collection sheets, when they've all been used, should provide you with a really general idea of how effective the instructions you're analyzing are. So last but not least, I want to take a look at the rubric. This rubric is pretty simple. Everything is worth 20 points, but the metrics and data collection sheets relate to each other, so coming up with good things to measure and ways to measure them are worth 40% of your grade on this project. You want to make sure that you're reading through all of these descriptors. Get an idea of what an A looks like, a B looks like, a C looks like, and make sure that you're aiming for the A. Don't try to aim for the C. Try to aim for the A. So in the last video, I didn't go over the rubric, but I think it's important to just remind students sometimes to use the rubrics. They're not only used for grading, you can also use them as you're developing your own materials. So I recommend you stop, review the rubric, and then go back and re-watch this video. Now that we've gone through the video once, take a look at the sample a little bit more closely, go back and re-watch the video and see if you can clarify anything that was muddy or confusing to you the first time, and then talk to your group members. What did they get out of the video? What did they get out of the readings? What did they get out of the rubric? And just to make sure that at the end of the project, everybody knew what they were doing and everybody's comfortable with what you're submitting. If you have any questions, you can feel free to submit those questions on Blackboard or email me if it's a question personal to your group. But I wish all of you the best of luck in completing your projects.